If you live in a state with a tight race, chances are you got at least one automated phone call urging you to vote in a certain way today. But some of the so-called robocalls have political bloggers in a buzz this morning. MSNBC's Monica Novotny is monitoring the political web today. Monica, what is the chief complaint with these calls?
Well, David, you know, this is one of those issues that's been bubbling up on the political blogs, particularly from the left-leaning ones over the last few days. And here's the complaint. For those of you not familiar, robocalls are those pre-recorded phone calls that come flooding in, especially in districts with tight races. Now, both parties use them, but the Democratic-friendly blog Talking Points Memo has been posting stories for days complaining about certain automated calls that are coming from Republicans. Now, the calls in question come from the National Republican Congressional Committee, and the complaint is that the calls start out sounding like they're coming from Democratic candidates, and then they go on to deliver negative messages about those candidates. So here's an example. It's a message about Democrat Tammy Duckworth, who's in a tight race, of course, for Illinois' 6th congressional district. Take a listen.
Hello. I'm calling with information about Tammy Duckworth. Tammy Duckworth said she would seriously consider repealing part of the recent federal tax cut. Tammy Duckworth's plan could mean higher taxes for married couples, and the death tax would return. And repealing the current child tax credit would mean that the tax credit would get cut in half. Tammy Duckworth is wrong on taxes and wrong for Illinois. This call was paid for by the National Republican Congressional Committee and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.nrcc.org. Thank you for your time.
So, David, Democrats say that if a person hangs up after only hearing that first line, I'm calling with information about Tammy Duckworth, they may assume that the call is coming from that Democrat's campaign, and they may get angry with the candidate for bothering them at home, especially when, oftentimes when they do hang up right away, the calls keep coming from the computer repeatedly. And, of course, the other side is if the person does listen to the entire phone call, then they hear what is essentially a negative message, as you just heard. So there's really a no-win, the Democrats say, for them on this issue. Now, yesterday, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee sent the NRCC a cease and desist letter saying the calls violate FCC regulations, saying, quote, the entity responsible for a pre-recorded telephone call must be identified at the beginning of the message. But NRCC lawyers respond that that regulation does not apply to political nonprofit organizations. Now, we called the NRCC, and spokesman Ed Petru told us, quote, all of our calls are in compliance with the law. He also said that the NRCC isn't doing robocalling in states where it's illegal. Blogs like left-leaning Daily Kos, though, are asking readers to record any robocalls they get, and they're planning to file complaints about the calls that they believe do violate the law. Now, the right-leaning blogs have pretty much ignored this issue, but those who do mention it echo the thoughts of one poster on the Washington Monthly's Political Animal blog, saying, quote, the problem isn't that these robocalls mislead voters. The problem is that Ken Mellman was slick enough to set up the robocalls and Howard Dean wasn't. The Republicans outsmarted the Democrats, and the Dems are whining about it. So there you have it. David?
All right, Monica, thank you very much. Up next, the poll.